Halloween is upon us once again, and you know what that means? It's time to talk about a spooky video game. Now, if I were a sensible person, the logical thing to do would be to make a sequel to my Luigi's Mansion video. In more ways than one, but screw that because we're taking a look at a better game. A game with murder, mystery, and worst of all... Are you shaking yet? You should be. So without further ado, let's get started. Hey there, I'm Kardino, and if you haven't run off screaming yet, you may just be ready for what's to come. Okay, now if you couldn't tell, this isn't going to be a serious critique or something like my normal videos. Sometimes you just gotta laugh at something, and I luckily have just the game. Disney's Guilty Party was released in 2010 for the Wii as a budget title for the family. And I think we're already thinking the same thing. Shovelware. So who were the heroes that made this thing? Well, that would be none other than Wide Load Games, a name I am way too immature to not snicker at. But actually, the story of this company is kind of interesting. It was initially founded by former employees from Bungie, which if that name sounds familiar, they're the guys that made the first 3 Halo games. Yeah, that Bungie. But anyway, the studio was founded in 2004 before being bought by Disney in 2008 and sadly being shut down in 2014. In that time, they shipped 5 games, 1 for Xbox, 2 for 360, 1 for mobile, and finally the 1 game for Wii, Disney's Guilty Party. I find it really interesting that this isn't based off any previous franchises, but at the same time, I'm kinda glad. So now, without beating around the bush any further, let's jump in. Alright, so this game features a surprising amount of content, but the main thing we'll check out is the story mode. There are 9 chapters here, most taking place in their own unique locations. But let's start with the prologue. The story begins with introducing us to the Commodore, a longtime detective who's the head of the Dickens Detective Agency. But tonight, he's not so happy because someone ate his pudding. So he charges us to find out who did it. Thus begins the tutorial, but it's also here that we get introduced to our cast of characters, full of amazing personalities such as the fat guy, the old lady, and your little brother at his most annoying. In total, there are 6 characters, plus the unlockable Commodore. Now, although I was just joking about the characters being a bunch of stereotypes, and they kind of are, not gonna lie, they actually do have fully realized backstories and motivations. For example, Fat Guy, or as he's actually called, Max Dickens, once dreamed of becoming an actor but got caught up in the family business and never really got the chance to move on. Or Rudyard Dickens, aka Kid Riddle, is the son of Phoebe who's in training with the FBI, complete with an absentee father? Okay then, I did not expect that. Well anyway, my point is that even if the backstories are never actually brought up in the main story, their personalities still get a chance to shine in the cutscenes and they bounce off each other really well. Actually, the writing in this entire game is surprisingly good. For example, they know Rudyard is going to be annoying to anyone over the age of 15, so they play off of that.
We need to find whoever did this.
Who or what? I think you'll find when all is said and done that the conductor was a victim of Santa Claus, the only man on Earth known to carry a large supply of coal at all times when...
Thank you.
So anyway, on to the gameplay. It's like a board game where you have a set amount of actions per turn, and your job is to figure out who the culprit is, all while collecting evidence and building a case. Now obviously this is a game for families, so there are only 4 traits you need to solve. But especially in later cases, they throw you off with useless clues and false positives. You've also got your suspects, of course, who you can interrogate by playing a minigame. And here is definitely where the Wii vibes are at their strongest. Most of these have completely nothing to do with interrogation and in some cases may very well be illegal. But I will say that as you get better at the game, it will scale the difficulty and by the end, things can get pretty challenging. I think it's kind of funny though how the suspect will react to what you're doing. So like at one point I had to stare down with a military general, but he kept covering his eyes. so naturally I pinched his nose until he cracked. He reacted accordingly. Anyway, there are more layers to the gameplay like random events and sleuth cards which give you extra actions, but in general, the entire thing reminds me of a game of Clue. Now obviously you can feel where the game had a budget. Lots of voice lines are repeated, and after a couple hours, it starts getting into meme territory. Remember guys, Max is a fat guy, so what are his default voice lines?
I'm ready, willing, and hungry for justice. I'll solve this case or I'll eat my hat. Seriously, I've done it before. It's like eating a burger made of pure joy. Ah, yes. I'm so happy I could eat a horse. Ah, yes.
But like with the writing, for what you'd expect going into a budget Wii game, the gameplay is surprisingly good. Well, that's 2 surprises in a row. But I think that's enough about the gameplay because we've got a story to cover. I'd give a spoiler warning here, but I highly doubt anyone will care that much. First of all, the prologue was a test, and it turns out the Commodore was the one who ate his own pudding. I just love everyone's exasperated expression here. But the real story begins at the dinner table. The Commodore received a letter from his longtime nemesis, Mr. Valentine, basically threatening to unleash his biggest plot yet on February 14th. But the Commodore has had enough back and forth with this guy, so he's retiring and leaving the team to deal with the issue. Suddenly though, the power briefly goes out and Mrs. Dickens is kidnapped. So like any good husband, the Commodore joins the search for his wife. Just kidding, he stays home and eats pudding. So fast forward past the gameplay and we find out that the one who actually kidnapped Miss Dickens was the butler. Apparently he's known Mr. Valentine for a while and was always paid pretty well. Hope it was worth getting kicked in the nuts. The group then finds a train ticket hidden in the butler's pocket, scheduled to leave that night. So that begins a series of cases where the group pursues Mr. Valentine, each chapter having to deal with some sort of crime. First a train gets hacked, then a celebrity manatee gets nabbed, then a cruise ship's anchor and wheel gets stolen, then an opera flautist gets murdered on stage. You know, goofy crimes like that. One thing I do find funny is how some villains you catch have actual motivations, and then some are just complete eggheads. No, seriously. There's even a mission where you need to stop Valentine from releasing what he calls love gas, which basically intoxicates people to make them prone to suggestion. Which, just a sec. Closest thing I can find is nitrogen oxide. I guess that would be bad to fill the world with. But anyway, the clues eventually lead them all back to Dickens Manor, and it's finally time to unmask the villain. I'd like to add that this final case is pretty difficult. The clues at this point are pretty cryptic, and I'd seriously doubt a kid could solve this on their own. But in the end, the villain turns out to be Mrs. Dickens herself. Turns out she was mad that her owner was spending so much of their time at detective work, leaving her alone, so I guess she decided to become a villain to be involved in their lives that way? Alright, are we just gonna gloss over the fact that she murdered someone for attention? Well, with the mystery solved, the Commodore reveals that he never planned to retire but needed to stay under the radar to unmask his wife as a culprit. So everyone celebrates and the credits roll. That was a surprisingly decent story. It was better than I expected anyway. It's kind of funny because at the beginning of this video, I said we were all thinking the same thing. This game is shovelware. And for sure, you can tell this game was developed on a tight budget. But for some reason, this game is way better than it has any right to be. In an interview leading up to release, the developers said they just wanted to make a family-friendly detective game and Disney gave them the opportunity to make it real. So I think it's fair to say that this was a passion project. Even beyond story mode, there's a free play with randomized clues, suspects, and villains, competitive multiplayer, and even a minigame marathon mode. The level of content here is actually pretty impressive given the circumstances. And the cutscenes, writing, and voice acting are surprisingly good too. It's almost like I'm watching a Pixar movie or something. A bad lower-end Pixar movie, but still. There was even an entire bonus chapter exclusive to the promotional site. It's unfortunately been partially lost to time, but again, hats off to the team at... Wide... Well, anyway, now that we've taken a look at this gem in disguise, I think we'll call it a night. Happy Halloween, everyone. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.